Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here with us today. We have a very brief program before us today, and that brief program is what we're going to be able to go through in a very short while. I have a chance. I hope that each of you has a small placard in front of you. Please scan the report. Once you scan that report, you'll be able to get the details of it. And once you have the details of it, you'll be in touch with the conversations that we're about to have. So if you'll allow me, invite to the front Mrs. Maxima Nsimenta. Mrs. Maxima Nsimenta is the leader at Nyowe Ventures, or more famously known as Livara. So please give her a round of applause as she comes to the front. Her and I will attempt to engage in a conversation. Where do you want to sit? I think you should sit far away from the sun. Is it? That one. Yeah. It's in the sun. Eh? Anything to make you feel comfortable. So thank you so much for joining us, Maxima. We've had a fantastic welcome remark from UNCDF. They've provided us a very fantastic report to look at, to mull at the numbers. I must say that some of us, Maxima and I, have had this report for longer, so we can't say that we're looking at it for the very first time. And so maybe I'll start by asking you to introduce yourself so that our audience today knows you, who you are, and then we can get into the discussion.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name, Maxima Nsimenta. You did not murder it. Founder of Livara and boss lady right there. I empower several women and children with amazing hair products and skin products under the Livara brand, and we are looking to empower even so many more in the digital era together with UNCDF, especially women in northern Uganda in the Choli and Lango areas.
Very often people say the word empower women. What exactly does that mean? If you could explain it to me as a 9-year-old.
I have a 3-year-old girl. Let me picture you to be her. She's called Zula. For her to be empowered, what does empowerment mean? Do you know your name? Do you know your worth? Do you know that you're a woman? Do you know that you are beautiful and can comfortably call yourself beautiful? Do you know that you can do anything? Do you know that you have access to anything you want in the world? What does this mean? Information, school, travel, using your brain without necessarily killing yourself or selling yourself short of who you actually are. Can you stand up comfortably next to a man and represent yourself and present your ideas without feeling less than? For me, that's empowerment. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Now, let's get into the meat of the conversation. Tell us a bit, what is it that you do at Nyowe Ventures? You're typically one of the most empowered women alive at the moment, and you run Nyowe Ventures. What is it that you guys do at Nyowe Ventures?
Empowerment. Let me throw a few more lights for myself. So I'm a girl who was trained as an electrical engineer, and I managed to graduate with a first-class degree in electrical engineering. I was an expatriate. Guys,
please clap. A first-class degree in electrical engineering is amazing.
Yes.
Or in any engineering, for that matter.
I was part of the team that made the first electrical car you call the Kira EV here in Kampala. So it's really empowerment at the highest level academically. But that wasn't enough. With my travels around the world, I realized that there is no particular high quality products for hair and skin based off of a limitation that I had abroad that is made here in Africa. So I went all out to build a team that would manufacture high quality products based off scientific values and principles that would be available to provide solutions for problems we face as Africans, for us here in Africa, by Africans, to Africa and the world. So it's very important for me to work with African people educated, firstly in African institutions, and to make these products that are tested and approved by the world using different certifying bodies across the world. So that's what we do at Livara. Our choice is hair and skin for Africans because that's the fastest way to know that this is an African person. I mean, you can only tell me by my hair and my skin first, right? And then my body build. So for us, that's what really is important for us at the core. Products for hair and skin using shea butter for one, raw materials that are available in Africa. And we're doing that well.
And what would be the space for digital solutions in your entrepreneurship?
Oh, so digital is an empowering tool, for lack of a better word. In the past, everything was analog. I count 1 + 1 on a piece of paper to give me 2. Right now, if I need to make, for example, a product, I can simulate it in an environment that may not necessarily be real, but may be technical through a digital space. For me, that is digital. But at Livara, what do we do? Other than using different technologies that are monitored, sometimes through PCs, we make products. Then for us to spread out into the markets, we use digital tools like Facebook, Instagram, which many people have access to through their phones. Not only that, we need to make sure that our supply chain is intact. Now we have a project we are running to map out the different farmers, what they do, what kind of lifestyles they live, and how many trees they have, how much can they supply us, so that we can easily pay them through the phone, collect easier for us. That way it eases our process of production and doing things while adding value to each and every one across the value chain. That is digital empowerment for me.
That's really fantastic, but the numbers that we see from the UNCDF report show us there's a digital divide between women and men in terms of access to funds, access to even mobile money accounts. Are you factoring that in as you deliver the solution in the communities?
In the community where we're working right now, it's unfortunate that those numbers may even be worse for women out there. Because of the cultural divide is really big, and it's hard, it's painful. Women don't have access to funds, not because they don't necessarily have the money, but then it is controlled by the men because of the cultural aspect of things. So to empower a woman to have access to a phone, to control the money, the man has to be liberated into thinking that the woman can also share the resources that will build the two of them together. So it's a very shaky ground we're walking on, but when we liberate and empower the men to believe that the women need that access to be able to support them in their dreams and goals at first, then they will give the women access to also be on the same platform. So in Kampala and other developed places, we are eons away. There, it's a step-by-step process, which is a bit shaky, but will eventually, in time, get to where we currently are.
I also saw in the report the average income for people working in those communities is really so low, and sometimes in communities like that where average incomes are still so low, access to credit is really like the lifeline between success and failure for entrepreneurs. What would you say to speak towards the access to credit for women that have mobile phones and the difference it creates between those that don't have mobile phones?
So most of these numbers that are recorded are numbers that are offered to the people carrying out the reports. In actuality, people have some money, right? People make some money. Someone with an acre of sunflower will make $1 million or so from it. The issue that comes up is how they use the money. That's where the problem currently is. I was telling a story of someone, after selling 60 million shillings worth of sunflower, they get the money and then make the oxen drink beer because it's a celebration in the village. The lack of record keeping is the one that disturbs them, and the lack of records is what gives them the challenge of not having the proper route and tool for them to get access to credit, which is a bigger problem generally. It's record keeping that is the problem. So with digital, then it gives them power to keep records that are better aligned for them to get access to credit. Yeah.
If I could ask you again about access to information, because information is also very important, particularly in a business like yours. Farmers need to know when to plant, how to plant, when to cultivate, how to cultivate. They need to know when you're coming to collect that kind of product. Yes. How does the digital divide set them apart in access to information?
For starters, because they do not have access to the smartphones, then they may not necessarily have the access to the information that is needed for them to get all these benefits to improve their lives. Take the example here, some of us develop people who have phones. We have these phones that are connected to the internet, but then the information we're looking for is TikTok videos for dancing or TikTok videos for other things. Yet we could be using this information to research about economic policies that, for example, this report that UNCDF has just released, hundreds of people have received it, tens of people will read it, right? That is access to information. So these other people may not necessarily have the technologically advanced phones to give them that access to information, maybe because of the lack of savings for the money required to purchase them. But information, once you have a smartphone, the access is there. The issue is, are you empowered enough to actually want to look the information to build you up, or are you more interested in entertaining yourself?
That's a very, very good point to make, and I know that there are some people in this room who will speak towards access to information. But maybe before I let you go, my final question to you: if you could imagine the perfect world on the digital space, what does that look like? What should we paint it like?
Let me dream. My future of success in the digital world. Do I know what tomorrow is like? Weather-wise, climate-wise, temperature-wise. Do I know what tomorrow is like? Do I have do I have my business planned out, my life planned out, right? Am I keeping records? Stuff like that. Can I open my doors by just clapping, switch on, switch off the lights, not by just clapping? Can I control all my world in one little device? Do I need to carry a big heavy phone? Can't I just do it, through my skin? That is digital empowered. Can't I think it and then it comes to life? That is making technology and the digital world, for me, be successful. Until we get to that point where by just imagining something and then it comes to life, then we haven't yet really reached the point of success for digital. But then again, someone could think that I'm a paranoid scientist. So what is success for me right now? Controlling my life, business and personal, through my phone, getting information and using it to build things around me. But then I'm an information, nerd. I like knowing. So when I lack the information and the access to things, for me there's a failure. When I know that there's money available and I can't access it, for example, that's a failure. So I look to bridge the gap. And if information, keeping records, tracking, because digital is all about information and manipulating it, right? So if I can get access to information, manipulate it for my benefit, then that is success for me. So your level of success could be different, but in the end, it's manipulating information in such a way that it is good enough for you, gives you more money, gives you better health, gives you better kids, things like that. So yeah, that's success for me. Also gives you kids when you can't get them. I mean, it's digital, it's technology, so yeah.
Thank you so much, Maxima. A round of applause for her as she goes back. I now want to invite my panel before us, after which we will have a small video played for you guys. But I have the singular honor and pleasure to invite the members of my panel. So I'll start with Susan Ngongi Namondo, who is the resident coordinator of the UN in Uganda. Can we please clap for her as she comes? I have Reverend Diana Nkesiga, who is a Reverend Canon with the Church of Uganda. Miss Sylvia Mulinge, who is the CEO of MTN Uganda. Guys, please clap. Your mobile money accounts might look different based on how we clap. And then I have Stella Alibateese, who is from the National Data Protection Office. And I have Mr. Innocent Tushabe, who is the Regional Program Coordinator at the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. And then you will have Mr. Raymond Mujuni, who is your moderator. So I think we need to demobilize this and then we can start. Yeah. Hello. Hello. Oh, okay. That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on the panel. I'll give you each a minute to introduce yourselves to our audience so that they can know you, and then we'll get straight into the questions. So I think we'll start at the extreme end.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, the UN Resident Coordinator, my fellow panelists. My name is Innocent Shabe. I work with Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development as an acting Principal Women Development Officer, and I've been working with Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development for the last 14 years under different capacities, and I'm happy to be here this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to my fellow panelists. I'm happy to be. Can everyone hear me?
No.
It's Reverend Diana is happy that technology may be failing. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here. My name is Stella Alibateese. I'm the National Personal Data Protection Director. I head the Personal Data Protection Office in Uganda. That office was set up under the Data Protection and Privacy Act of 2019. Besides my role, I'm a lawyer of about 27 years of experience, and about 12 of them have been in the technology space. Before this new role, I was the Director, Regulation and Legal Services for the National IT Authority. I'm an agricultural enthusiast. I'm a budding farmer. I love growing my own food. And I've recently actually started growing food on a commercial basis. So I love the things UNCDF does, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Susan Ngongi Namondo. From Cameroon, been in Uganda now for just over a year and a half, and I coordinate the UN family.
Hello, I'm Reverend Canon Diana Mirembe Nkesiga. I'm a priest in the Anglican Church, and I'm presently working in the space outside the walls of the church. I'm director of Pumla Retreat Center, and like my sister here, I've raised my first cow. It calved about a month ago, all done through the internet. It's a YouTube cow.
YouTube is your friend.
Wow, I can't wait to see that YouTube cow. My name is Sylvia Mulinge. I'm an East African born in Kenya, living in Uganda now. I have been here for the last 6 months. I'm a mother of 2. Proudly celebrating all the women, especially in this International Women's Month. So Happy Women's Month to all the women. It continues to be a month that we celebrate ourselves. And I also am privileged to serve as the CEO of MTN Uganda. Thank you.
I think that's a very important point, and I like to start with it, that you serve as the CEO of MTN Uganda. And maybe to start with you, Sylvia. Some of the things that we see in the UNCDF report, things that you know by your own data as MTN Uganda, is that there's an actual divide between women and men in either access to mobile phones or even access to mobile money. Just how grave is the problem from where you sit?
I think the problem is big, but the good thing is it's conversations such as this and reports such as what have been published today and what we are celebrating today that are helping to reduce that divide. I believe what has happened is that even with the acceleration, first of all, it's great that we live in a country where digital inclusion, financial inclusion is celebrated, it's encouraged, it's well regulated. And we have seen a lot of growth in the mobile money sector and even in terms of driving mobile penetration. But obviously, I think because of the backgrounds that we come from and the way our societies have been constructed in the past, we realize that there are lots of things that have held women back from participating in this space. When you look at some of the reports that have been published, we have seen reports that speak about the level of penetration of mobile phones among women being about 20% lower than where men are, their male counterparts. Even when you look at their level of participation in services like mobile money, women, in spite of the fact that they do a lot more transactions, they don't do of the same volume and value as men do. And when you think about this, I think it's important for us in months such as this, when we think about women and how we can continue to drive a lot more inclusion of women, that we begin to ask ourselves, what are the things that are limiting us? There are obviously challenges in terms of the potential that women have been given in society to be able to earn, right? Which therefore has an impact on their disposable income. Many women also carry the burden of paying for household expenses. They're caring for their children, they're caring for their families, and therefore the amount of money that they're left with to be able to probably participate, buy devices, then is a lot more limited. But I think the biggest barrier that we must obviously overcome is the one that comes from our cultural backgrounds. We find a lot of women, and we found instances, and even this week, my team and I had traveled to the northern part of the region, and you actually find women still carrying SIM cards in envelopes, and they have to get permission from their husbands who carry the mobile device in the home to be able to use the phone. Or some of them, you find instances where for them to be able to own a phone, they have to be given permission by their husband. So I think these are some of the things that hold us back. But I believe the more we continue to drive literacy, we continue to drive the awareness about the economic opportunity that lies in unlocking financial and digital inclusion for our women, the more this divide will be bridged, and therefore conversations such as this help us to be able to address this.
That's a great opener, and I saw Rev D nodding, and I'm coming to you because you speak to the hearts and minds of many Ugandans. You speak to the social norms that construct this kind of society that we have. What is it that you're doing in the spaces that you're in to sort of break these barriers that create these social norms for things like carrying a SIM card in an envelope and begging for permission to put it in a mobile phone to be able to use it?
I actually didn't nod. I was actually shocked that is happening, and but the church for a long time has broken the mold in some spaces for women. I'm looking way back in 1905 where people went to the rural areas. They picked out rural girls and they started Gayaza High School. But then also the church has hindered some of our cultural, they haven't opened up our cultural spaces to open up to, they don't look at the power dynamics, they don't, I think their eyes are closed. Maybe they think it's not their space. But because some of us have come into that space, I think a new perspective is opened up, and the church has spaces which many people don't know are very powerful spaces where women meet on their own. In Church of Uganda, for example, Fathers Union opened only the other year, but they realized women, as they met, that they were pushing the barriers back. What needs to happen is, in those spaces of Mothers Union, Christian Women's Fellowship, the youth, that we need to be able to take that into the rural areas and help open up minds, mindsets, and support our sisters in the rural areas to be able to have access, but also to help the men understand that it would be really helpful for them, for women to have that sort of access. Yes.
Thank you so much. Maybe I move to Susan on this question too. You coordinate a very powerful family, like you said, the UN family in Uganda. And I was thumbing through this report, and it's a pain to see that almost half of the women who were polled in this report didn't have mobile phones. And for men, just 5% didn't have mobile phones. That's a huge barrier. And some of these things look structural. What is it that development partners can do about the structural problem before we get to the social norm problem?
Actually, I was going to focus on the social norm problem. But anyways, on the structural problem, I think it's really looking at the policies in place and the regulatory framework that we do have in place. I think there are a number of policies in place. Some of them appear to be gender blind, so you have to make sure that we have policies that are really looking at what the challenges are. I think another thing, quite frankly, in this policy space, I know the government has a gender action plan, so this is beyond just the digital space. This is much broader. So if we can really focus on these sort of broader actions, the gender action plan, making sure that there's really mainstreaming across the board, I think we'll be able to unlock. But I think we cannot underscore, quite frankly, the norms. I think the norms are huge. So you need to have some policies, regulatory framework, you need to have programs, but the norms is the big piece. I think that's what really determines whether you're going to have an uptake of some of these programs and a success in the policies. So I think that's an area that we really need to focus much, much more on.
Are we seeing a likelihood of UN men, for the way the Fathers Union has started? But how would you tackle the social norm problem as the UN family?
Well, I think there are a number of programs out there that have proven to work. This is work that takes a really long time. It doesn't happen quickly. Quite frankly, we don't change our beliefs and our attitudes very quickly. So it's really finding what works within certain communities. Also, it's not universally applied. What might work in location A doesn't necessarily work in location B. And generally, while we do have some good examples, I don't think we've really documented as well across board and really, marketed is not the word, really publicized to the broader public that these things do work. So you have a number of programs, different agencies are doing things. UNICEF works in the norm space, UN Women works in the norm space, UNFPA works in the norm space, but they've tended to be rather, for lack of a better word, niche products. We need to go greater in scale.
Stella, if I come to you, Sylvia mentioned something here that I'm sure should have shocked you as well. If somebody is carrying their SIM card in an envelope and they have to put it in a phone that's not theirs, it truly raises some data protection concerns. And one of the things in these cultural norms is that women do not actually have protection over their data on the mobile phones. And this could even extend to money on their mobile money accounts. What is it you're doing in your spaces to improve data protection for women?
First of all, I want to thank UNCDF for doing this research and producing this report. I had time to extensively read the report in the morning, and I was really shocked. I was actually at pains, just like Reverend Diana, that we still have communities where for a woman to access a phone, they must seek the permission. Beyond that, they have to be supervised as they use that phone. Already those are issues in the data privacy and data protection space. Obviously, when the CEO MTN mentioned that people are moving around with SIM cards and swapping SIM cards, that already is a breach. Because when we use these digital devices, whatever we do on those devices is left. There's a footprint on those devices. So if you have one phone being used, literally being used by 5 people, there's already a breach. Secondly, if when you look at the study, it indicated that more people have access rights than actually ownership, which means we have many people who actually do not have mobile phones, yet they are using the digital solutions. What that means is that in many cases, if my husband is the one who has the mobile phone, but the number is mine, every time I want to withdraw or send someone money, he has to know, he has to participate in that transaction. I've had instances as a lawyer where I was representing clients, but the brothers were the ones registered on the titles. So even if the girls were the ones selling their own land, for them to get the signature on the paperwork, they would have to pay a percentage of their sale price to their blood brothers. So you can imagine, even within the family, we already have these stereotypes. Now, obviously, for me, the issue of lack of ownership is really critical. Because if you don't own that device, then you cannot protect your data. It means someone can access that data, they can misuse it, they can abuse that data. We are suffering with a lot of fraud. Yes. Many times it's because someone has accessed information that they shouldn't be accessing. When it comes also to technology, it enables the collection of large volumes of data. And for organizations like MTN to be able to analyze this data and make meaning out of it, they may employ advanced technology like AI. When you employ that advanced technology, in many cases, there are inherent biases. The person who did the code may be a male, and they may put in variables such as income, height, maybe color. And every time this machine churns out the results, you'll find that in this case, now that we know women have less access to phones, they are earning less, you'll find that that digital divide widens, because by virtue of the technology that we are using, they are already not catered for. We also know that a lot of research has been done on the impact of technology on women. And we found that women bear the brunt of the negative effects of technology. In Uganda, I think what we normally see are the pornographic exposure of pictures from a relationship that, yes, was consensual, but it goes bad, and then the man releases these personal information. So I agree with you. The issues that have been raised by the report are actually very, very pertinent in the data protection and privacy space.
Thank you so much. Innocent, I want to come to you because you represent government on this panel. You sit at the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. One, we've already done 10 years on our National Development Plan, but that development plan was gender blind around its digital vision for 2040. it didn't consider things like we've seen in the UNCDF report, that access to mobile phones is not actually shared the way that it's envisioned in that plan. What is it you're doing in your space to around making those policies understand the intricate nature of societies that we're operating in, and making sure that they actually address the concerns of women and women inclusion?
Okay. Thank you so much, our moderator. There's no question that the issue of digital gender divide must be addressed. There's no reason why women and girls must continue to lag behind in the digital transformation. And so by the virtue of the mandate of Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, which is basically to mobilize and empower communities to enhance their potential while protecting the rights of the most vulnerable groups of population, including the women, and especially looking at the rural women. The Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, as you've mentioned, worked closely during the development of the Vision 2040 and the National Development Plan 3 to ensure that indeed the issues that are affecting the accessibility to digital technologies are addressed. But I know that that one we shall discuss it later. But at the ministry level, we are implementing a number of interventions which are all geared towards addressing the issues that actually have been identified within the survey that was conducted by UNCDF. One of the critical issues that we are discussing, there are several constraints that of course women and girls face in trying to access the digital technologies. And we are talking about the issue of cost, the issue of affordability, the issues of social norms, where men are trying to control the women from using their mobile phones, even while they own them. And but because of the unequal power relations, you find that women are not able to utilize those phones. So at the ministry, we are undertaking a number of interventions, but one of the critical is where we are undertaking the empowerment programs that are focusing on empowering the rural woman to be able to access these technologies that we're talking about. We have quite a number of interventions, including the most common one, the Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program, whose focus is to increase the income levels of a woman. And so when we're talking about access to technology and the woman is empowered and maybe her income is better, she will be able to access, she will be able to utilize, she will be able to own, irrespective of other issues that they are likely to face. So we also have when you look at Ministry of Gender, one of the strategies that we think can work quickly to enable women and girls access technologies is through working with ministries, departments, and agencies whose mandate is directly in line of promotion of digital technologies. And so Ministry of Gender is working closely with Ministry of ICT, Information and Communication Technology, to ensure that the issues that are affecting women are clearly taken care of. For example, we worked with them closely on the development of the national ICT policy, where we made sure that one of the strategies was to mainstream gender within all our operations and all other areas of the policy. But also, as we've been discussing, one of the issues also that affect women and girls is the issue of knowledge, limited knowledge and skills actually to utilize even the available technology. And so we are working closely with the Ministry of Education and Sports to ensure that more girls are encouraged to enroll for STEM, what we call science, technology, and engineering, mathematics courses, to ensure that their skills and ability to use and utilize the available technologies is enhanced. But I want to mention that one of the critical things that has been mentioned here and throughout even within the report is the issue of the social norms that limit women from utilizing these technologies. So for us at the ministry, we agree and we accept that we must be able to bring men on board, have a clear discussion, so they're able to appreciate that a woman accessing a phone actually is not an issue. They should be able to utilize, they should be able to use these phones without really any hindrance. Because then we have seen that when a woman owns a phone, there are so many things that they can actually be able to do. For example, under the program I talked about, the Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program, we are seeing women using phones to market their products. Women are accessing appropriate technologies to improve the quality of the products they are producing. And we're also encouraging them to do what we call value chain production. But you cannot do that unless you have technology to enable you to do it. Because we're seeing majority of our women engaging in agriculture-related enterprises. And those are the ones they're interested in. But in order for us to help them to benefit from those, we should be able to encourage them to use what we call appropriate technologies, the simple technology that we can think about. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sylvia, I want to come to you because this is just not a government problem, it's also a private sector problem that can be solved with some private sector approach. If you are confronting the problem of bringing down the cost of the mobile phone, and also confronting the problem of increasing the number of women accessing your mobile services, which include lending, saving under your mobile platforms, and borrowing, how would you go about it?
I think first of all, I choose not to frame it as a problem, but an opportunity, right? I think the fact that we're here having a conversation means that the mindset around this is changing. So it's also important we frame it correctly, because I think talking about it from an opportunity perspective probably draws a lot more stakeholders to the conversation, because we all then see what can we then be able to derive economically, socially, in terms of the changes that we want to create. But yes, the opportunity obviously is massive. I mean, the statistics that have been patented by the report are clear and glaring, and therefore the challenge is to ask how then can we rise up to the occasion? And ideally, I mean, we believe that to be able to create any meaningful and impactful change, it cannot be done by one person. It has to be a collaborative effort. So there's what private sector has to do, there's what civil society has to do, there's what government has to do, and everybody has to kind of hold their inch in ensuring that this game of inches, we're all contributing our own individual inches, and the cumulative of that is what then enables us to be able to move forward. So from a telco perspective, our inch is making sure, first of all, we enable or allow the women to be able to access devices at much more affordable cost, because affordability has also been painted as a key barrier to access. There are various conversations that are happening around this. We have come up with our own innovative solutions, for example, providing device financing, which enables consumers to be able to own a smartphone for as low as 49,000 shillings as a deposit, and then after that you pay on a daily basis based on the amount of money that you're earning. And as soon as you make the deposit, you're able to walk away with a 4G enabled smartphone. And we have seen a lot of women take this up. We have over 200,000 devices that have been sold in the last couple of months, and we are working now with partners, especially handset manufacturers, working with people like Google, who are also interested in bringing a lot more internet users in the world, and therefore partnering with them to be able to see how can we actually be able to scale this. So bringing the cost down. Obviously, the level of taxation in devices is high, but this is an ongoing conversation which we have engaged with the various agencies in government. There are various perspectives to this, but I think the good thing to say is that at least they are willing to listen to the conversation. Right now, taxation on devices is about 33%. If you add import duty, I think there is VAT of about 18%, and other clearance fees and other things that are loaded up. So is there an opportunity for us to be able to look at this with focus especially on specific target groups in the rural markets, women, the youth, right? But we need to have a mechanism that is not exploited for the negative, but ensures that the device gets into the hands of the right person. Obviously, with initiatives such as what has been spoken about, that the government is engaging in, we could even figure out how do we channel specific resources, either through the parish development funds that are model that are specific to women, and using the mobile money services that we have, because with what's happened with regulation, there's a lot of KYC information that is available, but how do we use it without, of course, compromising on the data privacy of individuals? So actually use that data to be able to do good. So the opportunities are massive. Opportunities for availing credit that is specifically anchored on the airtime usage of different customers, and using that to be able to extend mobile money credit. is a way of actually ensuring then that we create a lot more access to people who do not have access to finances. We know the power of women. When you put a little money in their hands, you put a seed, they give you back a whole tree, right? So how can we avail low-cost credit in ways that allow people to be able to use it either as working capital to be able to drive their businesses, or even seed for their as a seed capital to be able to grow, whether it's I'm waking up in the morning, going to the market, buying my initial day's produce, generating an income from that, and then coming back to pay it at the end of the day. You can be able to do that from the convenience of your mobile phone. But that mobile phone has to be a smartphone. And therefore, all these conversations have to kind of run in parallel, concurrently. There's what we are doing in terms of lowering the cost of the device. There's also the conversations around how do we lower the cost of internet, right? Because that is also a barrier. How are we then creating literacy around what women can be able to do with a device? I have access to information about markets. I have access to information about how I can be able to grow my business, create learning opportunities for my children. But also at the same time, I can use the same device to be able to get access to credit that then grows me. So it's a whole solution, a whole arsenal of opportunities or solutions that we can explore. But for them to be able to go far, we need the involvement of everyone that is represented in this panel to actually realize the gains that we want.
All right, thank you. I know there's someone who's not on this panel but is in this room that must take care of the taxation of gadgets, and I will find her sometime.
Yeah, you need to find her. She needs to be on this
Irene,
stage.
please prepare to answer this question at some point. Reverend Diana, if I could come to you, in terms of offering solutions now and finding opportunities to solve this problem, what can informal spaces do towards challenging the social norms? You have the most educated female population of Uganda in its lifetime, despite the high dropout rates. What can the educated ones do in terms of an opportunity of breaking these social barriers and social norms in those communities they come from?
First of all, I'm really grateful that this is coming at this time. I think COVID opened the church's eyes in terms of what the digital technologies can do. Now, we have a leadership which is my generation, but the upcoming leadership, they are very knowledgeable, and so probably they don't see it as a problem yet, because they have even though we're talking about women, they also use their digital what do you call them? Their technologies in a very limited way. And so they don't understand what you mean about the rural woman having access. But in these spaces that we are creating, for example, if I give the example of Kampala and its diocese, in our churches, actually, they don't belong to Kampala. There's a map, there's a church elsewhere in the rural area where they belong. And they influence those spaces. And when they visit the rural areas, they're given very high platforms to address people. And so changing those mindsets, especially teaching people the benefits, because most people think, oh, they're going to, women are just going to be gossiping and wasting their time. They're going to be watching they're going to be exposed to pornography and all sorts of things. If people can understand that this can build up these people who we minister to and build their dignity, that there will be opportunities to do that, I think the church wouldn't hesitate to, for those who already have that priority, to map it and go and influence, because there are already women groups together in every church. And I think you need to first hit the leadership, which is mainly male.
Maybe that's the problem.
But yes, they need to know that it is something they should pay attention to. They might say, that's not our problem, someone else. But also in the church, are all these people seated here? and they belong to different spheres where they can influence and help us change our mindsets. So I think we are a powerful tool, and because people are already gathered together, they believe if a priest comes and says, this is very important, you can have conversations which are meaningful and can change the mindset. At this stage, I just spoke to Reverend Dr. Lydia Staimbwa, who I mentored, and she's just done her PhD in that ICT, digital technologies, because the church now knows that they have to broadcast outside their walls, and that there's a church outside their walls. So our minds are being broadened, and so we just need to be challenged and our eyes open to the opportunities that come with it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Susan, if I come to you, the UN is great for its power of curation. You've curated all these nations of the world, and you're good at curating around problems. In terms of solving this digital divide problem in Uganda, what can you offer as a solution, as an opportunity to curate actors, like we have various actors on this panel, towards delivering the solution?
I think working around the sort of 3 areas I mentioned before. But before going into it, the norms that we've been talking about don't apply to all women, by the way, and I think that came out in the report as well. Somehow professional women, teachers, nurses, seem to be exempt from that need of permission, supervision, etc. In terms of what we do, I think we support a lot. The United Nations doesn't have its own program, for instance. We support a government program. So a lot of those programs that were mentioned by the colleague from Ministry of Gender and Social Development, we support, we work with. So in terms of increasing access to education, for instance, STEM, opportunities for young girls, opportunities for refugees, for instance, having community centers where they can learn and have access. In terms of supporting digital entrepreneurs in communities, in rural communities, so that they can go and market and sell digital devices, and also teach within the community. So the full gamut. I think the United Nations comes. The entire United Nations is interested in gender equality. Many of the members of the United Nations are interested in this issue of the digital divide and how to bridge the gap, so to speak. So in the various programs that government has, we come in and try and support and push.
All right, thank you. Stella, if we could come to you in terms of solutions, what solutions would you be offering to generate as much toolkits for women in rural communities to understand their data protection rights, to understand laws around data protection, but also to protect their own data?
I'll first tell you some of the things we are doing at the office to try and empower our communities. One of the things that we are going to do is we are going to translate our law and be able to speak in the language that our communities understand. If you look at some of the work we've done in the last 1.5 years of the office, is that most of our content is on the digital channels, but is also in English, which means that we can only reach a certain number of people. We are not able to reach the rural communities. Last year, NITA Uganda did an IT survey, and part of that IT survey, we had questions about people's understanding of issues to do with data protection and privacy. Some of the questions we asked were, if you're accessing the internet, have you shared personal information? The bulk of the participants said no. But we know that even when you log into your phone, you put in your password or something. Or if you log into your email address, you still have to provide your password and the like. Secondly, we asked how many of them had read the privacy policies, because all these things normally are there. Just a few of them. When it came to the rural participants, most of the responses were below 1%, which means that on our side we need to do a lot of work to talk about privacy in a language and in a manner that our communities understand. An example was given of a research that was done to understand why women were not using the medical facilities for childbirth. And one of the reasons, surprisingly, was the lack of a private, physical space and the breach of confidentiality. So we know that privacy is very important to even our rural women, and we need to start communicating in that language. In terms of the solutions, most of them have been shared, actually. First of all, we must all work together. I think government has done its best to put the foundation in place. The laws are there, the policies are there. I can confirm that if you do not have a certificate from Equal Opportunities Commission that shows that you've mainstreamed gender in your budget will not be approved. So government is already doing this work. But when we talk about norms, sometimes norms, it's not even about budget provision. It's about getting people like the church. I think the church is very important in this space to talk about what is the role of the head of the house. Because as Christians, we are told the man is the head of the household. And as a result of that, the man will own the phone because they believe they own everything in the house. They will want to supervise your movements. They will want to check what you've been accessing on your phone. But that, I don't think that was the man envisaged in the Bible. No. The man envisaged in the Bible was a loving husband, a democratic society within the home. I can see Raymond smiling. I'll stop at that. My second solution would be that partners such as the UN, when you're doing your programs, it's important that you ensure that your partners address some of these issues. I've talked to some of our partners, and sometimes when you talk about privacy or data protection, it's not of importance to them. They are just looking at those SDGs. But every time you lose a child, because the child was born in a banana plantation, because there was breach of confidentiality, that is a problem. So if it is impacted by privacy and data protection, then you need to take care of those issues. I would also implore the private sector, because sometimes the private sector is more agile than government. If they take, and I think they have, I recently saw, I think NBS, MTN, UCC was there on something to do with online fraud. If we work together, I believe the solutions are there and we can address these challenges. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Innocent, what are some of the solutions that you propose?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My colleague has already said that government is already doing its part. What is the fact is that whereas the report identifies the issue of blind policies to be one of the constraints as to why majority of the women are not accessing these digital technologies, the government has really worked on most of the policies. So if you look at the Vision 2040 that you talked about, the National Development Plan 3, which is very strong on the issue of digital transformation. Of course, we worked with them to ensure that the implementation action plans identify the issues that can help the majority of those who are missing out on access to digital technologies to be able to access them. So the issue of policies may not be an issue, but the issue of implementation. we tend to have very good policies. That one everyone knows. That most of the policies we have, even the policy I talked about, of the national information and communication technology, national policy, is very gender sensitive. It identifies different interventions that must be undertaken. So the question is the policy being implemented? So for me, I think as government, we need to focus more, of course, on ensuring that the policies that were put in place are implemented if the people we intend to serve are to benefit from them. Just recently, we concluded the third edition of our Uganda gender policy. And we are very deliberate to ensure that one of the critical and priority areas that were identified was on the issue of promoting information technology and innovation among the women. And so we are saying that women shouldn't just be consumers of technology. We're saying, how do we encourage them also to be creators of the different technology that we're talking about? So of course, as government, the issue of implementation, but also, it's also very important that we document what is working. We document what is working so that people are able to learn and continue to sensitize the policy makers that the people we serve are not homogeneous. Even women, when we talk about women, they are not the same. And she mentioned it, Madam Susan mentioned it, that women are not the same. So it's very important that we deliberately make sure that we work with these policy makers, sensitize them to appreciate that different women have different technological needs, so that at least women at different levels, whether in rural areas and urban areas, are able to benefit and utilize these services that we are offering. The issue of research, there's no question that, I mean, if you don't do research, you may continue to do similar things and getting no results simply because you're not identifying new ideas. And so for us as government, I think it's something that we need to continue doing and carry out to make sure that more of our women are able to, utilize and benefit from the different services being offered. The issue of dissemination, most of the times we develop policies, but they are never disseminated. Most of the policies that we have talked about, very few people are actually aware of them. She may be aware of them, people in offices could be, but so for me, I think that the dissemination of those existing policies becomes very critical if our women are to benefit from these different policies that are in place. And of course, providing resources. We're already talking about the issue of cost, the issue of affordability. How do we make sure that the resources are provided, especially to the most vulnerable categories of women, the rural women that we're talking about today, to ensure that they are able to benefit and indeed access and utilize the different available digital technologies. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I think we have space for about 3 questions, but as those 3 questions come, I would beg that Irene, the UCCED, just makes a very small intervention on the taxation
I think you need
on
to call her
device.
Engineer Irene.
Engineer Irene,
Yes.
I've been advised to add the engineer to it. You need to make a very small comment about the taxation of devices.
I thought I was friends with Sylvia. As for Raymond, I'm in your inbox soon. So yes, one of the challenges that we have, and I wish to thank the panel with the one male panelist. And yes, Raymond, I'm not calling you a panelist. Because they've done a good job of speaking to what the challenges are. And a lot of us are here and we make assumptions of how bad the situation is until you go to the grassroots. And that's when you appreciate that the gap is still there. Because of culture, because of affordability, because even of opportunities. And that's where all of us have work to do. So to the question asked regarding devices, I always highlight painfully before the discounts and promotions, the cheapest smartphone in Uganda was 245,000 shillings. Compared to these Kabidi torches. Now here are all of us saying that in today's era, most of the information is apps, internet, and all these. what the rest of us have taken for granted. We are complaining about what people use TikTok for. Some people are like, what? You go to areas and they tell you, the tweet, and they're looking at the bird. But to the rest of us, it's so obvious. And when we're saying we want to leave no one behind, we have to make sure that we get the devices into the hands. We are not going to start running for the era of computers. Laptop per child, yes, it's desirable, but so one of the things, for example, at UCC we observed, we said this line, they say that, you know, if you take broadband, there's the 10%, why don't we try? So there's that pyramid in terms of the people like Raymond who can afford the Apple, the Samsung Galaxies and the like. Then there are those ones who the industry has addressed by putting the higher purchase facility. You pay slowly over the year. But then there's that person whose only affordability might not even be the capability, but if they're lucky, then the capability. One, it will take a long time, it will last a long time. Now we're saying, how do we get them to be owning smart devices? So we decided to do a pilot and targeted that bottom of the pyramid and said, if we give a device per home, we now have Simi under Ingo Holdings in Namamve. So we ordered devices and said, okay, if we take the 4 regions and take two villages, and because we didn't want them to steal from each other, we decided every household get a device. The assumption is in that household there's a dad, mom, and children. So the dad can access farming information or entrepreneurship or any information available. The mom, yes, we also saw the success of the village phone. I always remember when we started mobile telephone in Uganda, most women had the village phone as a business. So we know how entrepreneur the women are. And we're like, okay, she will get information of that. And then the children, of course, will also find their way in there. And with that, again, we partnered with MTN and Airtel. And UCC puts a humble 3 gigabits for them. The findings were very funny. And culture has a lot to do with it. We have areas where the data got finished and they would reload for themselves. They wouldn't wait for the next loading. In other areas, it became a quarrel. You know, the madam left the home and carried it with them. Now it was an issue. In the other home, the man goes to the trading center with it. He moves around with it. He doesn't leave it. So we're seeing that even the device is becoming a problem that we have to address. I share this only for us to appreciate that as we look at this issue of devices, what can we do? So the 245, and I've always disturbed Sylvia, but then we named her new name recently this week. Please. She's Sylvia, because she's Ugandan now. I had to pull that one out. So we all said, what do we need to do? We've been disturbing them about the phones, the devices, and they're like the taxes. So we've been engaging with URA and Ministry of Finance to negotiate and say, let's give us a grace period so that you have more people come on board and we collect more. So the discussions are still ongoing. Of course, Ministry of Finance, you go with data. We don't go mudomo. We're still collecting the data so that we have evidence to support us in advocating a review of the taxation on phones. So the discussion is already going on, led by the Ministry of ICT, working also with the operators, so that we all see how to make sure we grow the size of the market. And this also speaks to the affordability issue. Because our argument is when the market is bigger, we'll be able to address part of the reason why we still pay so much. I'm answering that because I was attacked over that on Twitter this morning.
Thank you so much, Irene. And I think that gives us an indication of a solution. And maybe entrepreneurs in the room, you can start manufacturing mobile phones. Do we have any other questions? I could take just 2 more before we close. There's a question on this end. There's a microphone that's going to meet you right there.
Hello, good evening. I'm Doreen Merinandudu. Nice to be here. This message goes to Sylvia. Finally, I've got a message to you. I've been following you. This is the third time I'm listening to you. I'm blessed to listen to you again. Well, I love charity. My main goal is to see that the gap between children who can't afford internet, who can't afford these services, it's brought nearer. I would love to have a platform whereby in a school, as my charity organization, we offer laptop, PC, whatever, and we have some discounts on internet. How is that possible for us as people who are not making money but are reaching out for those who can't afford? So how can we reach there? Thank you so much, Sylvia.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other question? Okay, if we don't have, I think I'll come direct to Sylvia. I know that you zero-rated access to education materials during COVID-19.
Wow, look at you. You're very educated.
Yes, now's a perfect time to answer that question too.
Yes, so that is done. But I think over and above that, Doreen, first of all, thank you for thinking beyond yourself. I think the biggest thing you can ever do is what you do for others. So well done on what it is that you're doing, and would be proud to partner with you. So there's obviously what has been done around zero rating a lot of the content that is given to educational institutions. But over and above that, the MTN Foundation specifically focuses on ICT as a platform that you can actually invest in, especially for students or student populations that don't have access to the internet. We also have invested even in communities. We have an internet bus that goes around communities driving literacy, digital literacy, and therefore, I mean, there's a myriad of avenues that we could actually explore with you. So we can speak after this and then see what we can be able to do. Thank you very much for the question.
No worries. Doreen will charge a consultancy fee there.
No, she will not.
But maybe we make a concluding remark, starting with you, Sylvia, and then we end with Innocent. Yeah. So your concluding remarks.
I think the fact that we are having the conversation is a great stride in the right direction. So first of all is to thank my panelists. I've learnt a lot. I also didn't realize that the government is doing so much. I also didn't realize, we have never kind of thought about what is the role that the church plays, yet all of us, the way we live our lives, the way we look at society or even interact is really driven a lot by the doctrines that we have from a spiritual religious perspective. So I think it's good to have these conversations, because then you realize that the number of people who are actually actively seeking to make the change that we require are much more than you initially thought. And I think it's always good when you realize that you're not walking this journey alone. So for us, from an MTN perspective, our belief is that everybody deserves the benefits of a modern connected life. I love what Engineer Irene said. According to the Sustainable Development Goals, no one deserves to be left behind. And if the only reason why we have shown up here is to make sure that we continue to drive that conversation forward, we continue to get a lot more people included, then I think this evening will be deemed a success. So you can count on MTN to continue to be a partner in these conversations, and we also say thank you very much. We believe that together we are unstoppable, and that's what we are driving. So whichever part of society, whether it's the church, the government, the civil society, our other industry players, conversations and engagements through our regulator and the ministry, you can count MTN to be there. Thank you very much.
Reverend?
Thank you. I believe, again, like my sister Sylvia, in partnerships. And I believe the youth can play a pivotal role, especially in opening up literacy. There's lots of innovations happening now, and people need to do to have gadgets which are friendly, user-friendly for those who may have not had the opportunity to go to school. And I think that the church can open up the church space, I mean the building and the gardens, to have that sort of literacy campaign, how to use digital technologies responsibly for education, for agriculture, for health, for business. I think such hubs, they always have hubs. We can work very well with the youth because as mothers, even if we're talking about rural areas, even me, when I get a sophisticated laptop and my son is going to universities, usually we do a swap. I end up with the oldest gadget, but also because they don't believe I can use all of that modern gadget. They think, oh, she's going to type her letters and write her sermons. That's where there's so much more on this gadget. So because women have sacrificed, I believe we could work with the youth and that they could teach their mothers to benefit from these gadgets. I'm praying that my leadership will open up these spaces.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Susan?
No, thank you. I think we all here believe that women can play a really important role as regards our development, advancement. And I think these digital technologies can really be an enabler. I think we've mentioned a number of things that are happening already and what more we could do and what the gaps are. But for me, I think right now what we need to focus on is better implementation of what already is there. There's such a gap there. If we could better implement, better coordination, government, private sector, development partners, religious leaders, cultural authorities, just better coordination across board, I think would go a lot further. And also to invest in learning so that we are moving forward and we know what pushes us forward. I think we should focus on that. And I cannot help but make a small comment on the charity. I think it's very important to give beyond ourselves, of course. Charity is very important. But I hope we all equally push on structures. We should not depend on charity. It's important, it's complementary, but we need systems that deliver for all of us and leave no one behind.
Thank you so much. Stella?
Thank you. I think a lot has been said. On my part, I have 3 things. I think our discussion here shows that all of us are doing bits within our areas of operation, but it's important that we work more together. Secondly, looking at the findings, we need to do a lot of awareness because breaking those barriers, even if you push money towards it, it will take time and it needs the society to come with us. Thirdly, as the PDPO, we are always available to guide. Our view is that as these technologies are being developed, we know they are enablers, we know they are good for our society, we know they are good for the community, for business. Please enable privacy by design. Think about the risks and then make sure that as you develop your programs, as you develop those solutions, you take privacy into consideration. That way, when this technology is being used, there's a level of trust. And when there's trust, there's more adoption. One heartbreaker for me was that the research recognized that a woman who is earning is a valuable partner in the community. I always tell people, even if you're a housewife, please do something and sell something so that you can earn your own money. I think I've been vindicated and I'm happy about that. Let us empower women. We shall change our society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. I just want to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank UNCDF for organizing this event. And as everyone of us has said, I think if we work together, we shall achieve what we want to achieve. The problem is why we are working in silos and everyone seems to be doing something in their own space. So I think for me it's very important that government, the development partners, the CSOs, the private sector will work together to ensure that we push for this agenda if our women and girls are to benefit from the digital technologies. Of course, I want to challenge my colleagues, the men who are here. I mean, she said that I'm the only man among the panelists. So I want to encourage men who are here and are watching us, and even those outside, to become male champions, so that we're able to support our mothers, support our daughters, support all women in the community, to make sure that we push for the gender agenda and empowerment of women in Uganda. I thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Please, a round of applause for our panelists. They've done such a tremendous job breaking down what has been a very complex topic for us today. I'm going to just ask that we take a picture, a group picture, for the archives. And I think I'm now going to hand you over to Rachel so that you can continue from there.
Thank you so much. I would like to invite Jennifer, Maxima, and Irene. Please come and join the panelists here for a photo. We can now stand up. Maybe the photographers will tell us how to stand. But I like that we sat nicely. And really, what a distinguished panel. We are so blessed to have each and every one of you on this panel. It's not every day that you get the CEO, the Reverend Canon, the UN Resident Coordinator, the Director of the PDPO, the Minister of Gender, everybody in one room. This is absolutely CEO Livara. Thank you so much. Okay, we have so many cameras, but the official camera which I control is done, so you can feel free to join the you can feel free to join the rest of the participants. Thank you so much. A round of applause for the panel as they go to sit. Please, the spirit of the digital fireside. I think one of the things that has come out strongly is the way that we need to work together more closely. And the spirit of the digital fireside is to create a space for networking, for interaction, for knowledge sharing. And so this is the space. If you've always, and we have people in the different spaces. I'm sure we have people from the different ministries. We have Bank of Uganda present. We have people working in the innovation space. We have people from the startup ecosystem, Startup Uganda. You're always on our side. So we thank you so much for coming. Please interact. But before we do that, we're going to show you a small video that summarizes what this report really has been about.